All right, good afternoon. In a few minutes after I'm done with you and you're done with me, we will be delighted to be joined virtually by Fabrizio Hoschchild, the Special Advisor of the Secretary General on the preparations for UN75. He will brief you on the findings of the UN75's final report, which was launched a few hours ago. The report was also shared with you this morning. Mr. Hochschild will give you a preview of the People's, the event planned for London on this Sunday to mark the 75th anniversary of the first UN General Assembly session. As mentioned yesterday, this event will kick off the Secretary General's first virtual official visit to the United Kingdom. In his remarks, the Secretary General is expected to highlight the importance of the work of the General Assembly throughout the UN's history, as well as its relevance now for the world as well as its relevance now as the world is struggling to address changes such as climate, the pandemic, and conflict. We will share the remarks with you under embargo as soon as we get them. Late last night, you saw we issued 3 senior UN personnel appointments. Just want to read those quickly into the record. The first, Secretary General is appointing Abdoulaye Mar Dieye of Senegal as the Special Coordinator for Development in the Sahel. This follows calls by the Security Council as well as the Economic and Social Council for strengthening collective and integrated engagement across the Sahel region. In response, the Secretary General is appointing the Special Coordinator who will lead the efforts, including financing, to implement the UN's integrated strategy for the Sahel and its support plan for scaled-up UN development response for the Sahel, drawing on all the UN's assets in the region, engaging and supporting the efforts of the G5 Sahel Group, the Sahel Alliance, the Ministerial Coordination Platform, ECOWAS, the African Union, the European Union, the World Bank, and the African Development Bank. You may know Mar Dieye from his 35 years of experience, and he is currently the Special Advisor for Administration of UNDP, and we congratulate our friend Mar on this appointment. Also appointed was Volker Perthes of Germany as the Secretary General's new Special Representative for Sudan and head of the UN Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan, which has a new acronym, UNITAMS. Mr. Perthes brings to this position over 25 years of experience in academia, research, international relations, and diplomacy, including with the United Nations, as well as expertise in conflict resolution and regional geopolitics. And lastly, we appointed, not we, but the Secretary General appointed Mette Knudsen of Denmark as his new Deputy Special Representative for the UN mission in Afghanistan. She will focus on political issues. Ms. Knudsen succeeds Ingrid Hayden of Australia, to whom the Secretary General expresses his gratitude for her dedicated service. Ms. Knudsen brings to the post over 28 years of experience in diplomacy, international cooperation, and economic development. Most recently, she served as Denmark's ambassador in Kabul. An update on Ethiopia to some of the questions I think were raised by Edie yesterday. Just to tell you that we, along with our partners, have been able to access areas that have been previously inaccessible. Localized fighting and insecurity continues, with fighting reported in rural areas around Mekele, Shiraro, and Shire. That's all, of course, in Tigray province. Access to most parts of northwestern and eastern and central Tigray remains constrained due to the ongoing insecurity and bureaucratic hurdles. 2 of the 4 refugee camps in the region, Hitsats and Shimelba, are still not accessible. Our colleagues at OCHA, as well as the World Food Program, which, as you may know, leads the logistics efforts in this coordinated approach, continue to work with the authorities to streamline the cargo clearance mechanism and ensure safe and secure access to Tigray and bordering areas. We estimate that 2.3 million people are in urgent needs of humanitarian assistance in Tigray, including 1.3 million additional people due to conflict, and over 950,000 people already there, including refugees. These figures are likely to change in the coming period as further information continues to become available. And the UN mission in the Central African Republic tells us that the three-day period to appeal provisional results to the presidential elections to the Constitutional Court ended yesterday. The Constitutional Court reportedly has until January 19th to examine the appeals and proclaim the election's final results. The mission continues its work to protect civilians and is deploying reinforcements to its temporary operating base located in the town of Grimari in Ouaka Prefecture. This is happening as a coalition of armed groups, which includes UPC and the anti-Balaka faction, are continuing their attacks on the Central African Armed Forces position. Yesterday in that area, some National Security Forces personnel, as well as civilians, have sought shelter at UN premises. In Buar yesterday, peacekeepers and soldiers from the Central African forces exchanged fire with armed elements, prompting the displacement of hundreds of civilians. UN peacekeepers are continuing robust patrols in Buar and other areas of deployment. And also flagging that from Central African Republic that UNHCR says that the violence and insecurity surrounding the elections has forced over 30,000 people to flee into neighboring Cameroon from the CAR, and also fled into Chad and the DRC, as well as the Republic of the Congo. Most of them, that's over 24,000 people, have crossed the Ubangi River into the DRC's provinces of Bawele and North Ubangi. Obviously, UNHCR remains concerned about reports of human rights violations taking place inside the country and urges governments in all neighboring countries to continue granting access to asylum and supporting local authorities by registering new arrivals. And our human rights colleagues said today they are deeply concerned by the deteriorating human rights situation in Uganda ahead of the parliamentary and presidential elections scheduled for January 14th. Between the 18th and 20th of November, at least 54 people were killed during riots and protests in at least 7 districts across the country, and the arrest and detention of 2 opposition presidential candidates and members of the political opposition. UN Human Rights Office called on authorities to protect the rights of freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, and to ensure free and peaceful elections that guarantees the rights of the people in Uganda to participate in the country's public affairs, including taking measures to prevent instances of electoral violence. And I think I will stop there, take a few questions, and then we'll go to our guest. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Stéphane. Sorry. Today, the U.S. Treasury Department has imposed sanctions on the Iraqi militia Hochschild leader Falah al-Fayyad, and I'm quoting here from the Treasury statement. It's for his connection to serious human rights abuse. Any comments on this?
No, I have to see the report. I have no comment on this at this time. Edie? Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, and we'll go to Edie.
The Military Staff Committee is now in a closed meeting. The situation in Libya is on its agenda. Can we have more highlight on this?
For the military, I'll see what we can get. Okay. Yes, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Does the Secretary General have any comment on the Indonesian release of the cleric who inspired the Bali bombings where, you know, several hundred people were killed?
Let me look at the, I don't have information on the exactly how he was released. What is clear for, and let me look into that, what is clear is that there needs to be accountability and continued accountability for that horrific bombing.
And I think several of us are wondering why the announcement of a major UN envoy posting for a new mission in Sudan was made last night, as opposed to by you today?
It's an extremely valid question. How can I leave it at that? Today's not a day for me to give answers, clearly. Errol. Errol, I see you waving, but I don't hear anything.
Now do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Go ahead. Okay, I don't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, Happy New Year. Let's not waste the time. How many people, as of your best knowledge, with what capacity actually UN is working now? How many people do we have on the daily basis in comparison with the last year before the pandemic?
If you're asking me how many people come into to the building every day, it's about,
Yes.
I think it's about 1,300 or so usually, but that is not a reflection of the number of people who are actually working, because, I mean, you may be at home, but I assume you're working. So the UN continues to work, from some of us from our offices, others from our kitchen tables, our backyards. A lot of colleagues I know are juggling duties with their children, making sure everybody's on Zoom, taking care of families. Like any other organization, we're continuing to work, and frankly, we're working full steam, just in different ways.
Vice Secretary General so far didn't receive the vaccine, and how many of the senior staff did receive the vaccine, and when the Secretary General is going to?
I'm not aware of senior staff getting the vaccine out of turn. We plan to follow the protocols of our host city, of our host state. I think the staff that works in large duty stations like New York or Geneva or Vienna will rely on national health authorities for the vaccine. The Secretary General and some senior leaders are of a certain age category. They will get it when it is proper for them to get it. And I think, if I recall properly, in his last time he was here in front of you, he also said he would have no objections to doing it publicly. All right, let's change things around a bit. Let's go to James Reinl first.
Hi, Stéphane. Thanks so much. I've got a couple of questions on Yemen. You've given us some updates about Mr. Griffiths' trip to Riyadh to meet President Hadi and then to meet the new government in Aden. Can you tell us a little bit about those meetings and the feeling that Mr. Griffiths got from the new government in the south there? What are his expectations now that he's left Yemen and continues his work?
Look, I would say that Mr. Griffiths remains as determined as ever to continue to push for a nationwide ceasefire, to push for peace, and also with him and his colleagues to push for much greater humanitarian access. This has been a long road, and it will continue to be a hard push, but I would say he continues to be very determined.
And part deux to that question, we're about 12 days out from a new US administration, which is obviously going to have implications for the peace process in Yemen. Are there any communications with the new administration, and are there any expectations for changes moving forward?
Whether it's in the US or anywhere else, we deal with one administration at a time. Let's go to Mr. Bays.
Put my cup of tea down. Right. These are questions about the Secretary General and his virtual visit. So I know I may also direct these to the USG when he comes on in a bit. First question, I know that the event on Sunday is the anniversary of the General Assembly. Clearly, 7 days later is the anniversary of the first Security Council meeting, also held in London. Is the Secretary General planning to take part in any event? Is there any event planned for that date?
My understanding from our discussions with our UK colleagues is that there will be some event, but at a later, possibly at a later date.
Okay. We're expecting the Secretary-General, as you have made clear, to make a speech on Sunday, and it's an important anniversary. One, can you supply an embargoed copy? I'm sure you will. But secondly, are we now going to start seeing a new tone from the Secretary-General? He's been looking over his shoulder for the last 4 years at President Trump. He only had 20 days in office before President Trump took office. Those, you never say it from the podium, but those close to the Secretary-General say he never wants to criticize President Trump in public. He now has a US president who's committed to multilateralism, who's committed to climate change. Are we going to see a Secretary-General untamed coming up from now on?
I will leave it up to you and your colleagues to do the compare and contrast and do a tone analysis. And I think you and I have maybe slightly on different wavelengths on this. I think the Secretary General's tone on issues of climate, on issues of human rights, on hate speech have been very strong and very direct. But as I told Mr. Reinl, we will deal with one administration at a time, whether it's in the U.S. or anywhere else.
And the final question, if I can, on the Secretary General, Steph. When will we hear from him? When is he planning to give a press conference? Because he's not doing one as part of this virtual visit.
No,
and there clearly is one
have
very important question now,
I'm sure,
4 years into his term, which is a second term. He's dodged the question until now, only a year to go. Is he going to seek a second term? And if you're not going to answer us, which I'm sure you're not, when is he going to tell us?
Okay. Well, yes, James, your predictions are correct. I'm not going to answer that question. We've penciled in a press conference for the last week of January, so it may happen around then. But I spoke to him about it before he went on leave. He's committed to doing a full-blown presser in this room in either early January or very early February. So that's not an issue. All right, Mr. Toby, I see you gesticulating.
Thank you very much, Steph. I just wanted to ask if there's been any contact yet with the incoming administration at all. We had some announcements today about the climate envoy office. Has there been any contact with relevant offices at the UN?
As we've said to you, the Secretary General has spoken to President-elect Biden, but I think the incoming administration is focused on the work it has to do. Secretary General was very pleased with the announcement of the incoming permanent representative, someone he's known for a long time and has worked for a long time. And it bears mentioning again that he's also had a very good and productive relationship with Kelly Craft. This organization has been through transitions in our host countries before, and we will go through this one, and we will look forward to working with the next administration. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. And I have also a few questions. First, I heard when you say that the EU issued a statement becoming the blocking of the social media for President Trump. I haven't heard that statement. Can you confirm there was a statement of such?
No, someone asked me about social media yesterday, so you could look at the transcript, but there was no official statement. And I just want to say, I think to James Reinl's question, I can't remember who asked me the question. We had about 600, I think it was I can't remember who asked me, but we had 650 people come into the building yesterday, but it had been before the holidays. It had been about 1,300. So, but yesterday, just to give you an example, 641. Okay. Any other?
I have more questions.
Go ahead.
Yes, I didn't finish my question.
Go ahead.
Okay. My second question, yesterday, doctors in Gaza issued a very strong appeal for medical assistance, especially with newly born babies. They're running out of certain important medications. However, we haven't heard any word from any UN official since the last report to the Security Council about what's going on in the occupied Palestinian territories. And Israel is now getting loose to do anything they want without being checked by any state.
We will try to get you an update on the humanitarian situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. Okay, unless there are any questions in this room.
And my last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a list of all the special envoys being appointed by the Secretary? I want to do the compare and contrast myself to see how many Arabs have been selected as special envoys out of a nation of 400 million compared to other countries.
Well, I mean, the senior team, the special envoys, special representatives, heads of departments, that's all on our website. We can guide you to that. Yes.
Stéphane,
yeah.
can I confirm just what you said? Just to confirm what you said, is that?
I said 641 people swiped into the building yesterday. We had been.
And
1,300 was about the daily average in the fall and before the holidays.
Okay.
Yes, Benno, please go ahead, and then we'll go to Fabrizio, who's been very patient. Benno?
Thank you, Steph, and Happy New Year to you as well. So, as you know, the calls in the US grew louder for a removal of President Trump from his position, as many people think he might be a threat to international peace and maybe even using nuclear weapons. So does the Secretary General think that a US president who is unstable is a threat to peace?
No, it's not for the Secretary. The Secretary General will not opine on that question. Much to James Bay's sadness.